Okay, looks like we're live here in the GrowSeattle Grow Lab Garden. I'm Scott, I'll be your host today, and it looks like we actually have some viewers here, so that is kind of fun. This is the first time maybe? I don't know. But today we have a couple things on our list. Gotta turn that volume down. Okay, so we have our Shiitake Mushroom log over there. I'm going to go ahead and harvest some of those mushrooms and we'll water it again. We'll go ahead and feed the compost bucket like we do every day. We'll go over some germination updates, although we don't have very many, I don't think. New plant updates. Again, I'm not sure if we have all that many, except for maybe this guy over here that I haven't shown. Coming up, and let's see, cutting updates, new cuttings. We'll take a look at the sunflower again as it keeps developing. We'll take care of these green onions that got kind of crushed because they were sitting back over here by the tomatoes. But I'm going to go ahead and cut them because green onions, you can just keep cutting them and they will keep growing back. So I was thinking that I would just go ahead and do that to get them a little bit cleaned up and then maybe have a salad later today. These Ziploc bags that were sitting over there got kind of lost because as these tomato vines keep growing and developing, it's hard to reach back there and hard to see, so I keep forgetting to water these guys. So we have the ivy cutting that I put yesterday. It's getting a little bit dried out. It wasn't a very big cutting. It has 2 leaves on it, and probably I should eventually maybe take those off. But what I was thinking is that I could put it in the propagation box back there, and that'll help keep it a little bit more humid and hopefully keep it from dying. And the other thing that I was going to do is, since these tomatoes are getting so long, and because I have a curtain rod up there, I was going to try to see if I could use this string, wrap it around that curtain rod, tie it around the tomatoes, and kind of hoist them up. And I was thinking that maybe eventually the tomatoes could kind of snake around the garden, and I think that would be a kind of a cool effect if I could make that happen. Yeah, so let's get started with the mushroom log. Let's see here if I can't okay. And actually, I don't know if that is in the shot. I might have to back up. So that there is the mushroom log. And actually, I'm going to turn off the grow light because we are by a window also. And I wanted to prop that up somehow, but I think all my buckets are being used, which is unfortunate. Maybe I could try to use the compost. But actually, this isn't leaking. I can use that. Okay, welcome to the professional production that is this garden. Okay. Where is that watering can? There it is. Okay, so like I said, we're just going to go ahead and maybe pluck off a couple of these. Okay, that is nice and big. Beautiful mushroom. Oh, that smells so fresh, and it's got a nice texture, nice and firm and plump, more so than what you would get at the grocery store, even though I did get this at the grocery store. I want to preserve this mushroom here. It looks like it's going to have the best chance of becoming the fullest, biggest one. So I'm going to go ahead and get this guy out. So just over here for the time being. This guy, something kind of in a bad position, so pull him. And the log is going to be standing up like this, so I think that is going to be good. And like I said, I think I'm just going to let this one go, because I want to see what it looks like when one develops. So we'll just wet it down. Looks like there's a new mushroom fruit coming here. And looks like maybe eventually another one will come here. And maybe one here. So I think we're still in a good position. Actually, I'll put this back here. Yep. There we go. Okay, so that's the mushroom log. We harvested and watered. And I'm going to go throw these in the kitchen just to get them out of the way. Okay, so we'll feed the compost bin now. Actually, I gotta get rid of these paper towels in the commercial compost, even though it's not actually that great to put in the commercial compost. Okay, so we just have some leaf clippings today. So just go ahead and throw that in. No big deal today. And it's just kind of chilling. So we'll let that do its thing. Okay. But it's nice to have kind of a daily thing to do. So feeding the compost and watering the mushrooms is fun. I'm going to put this back here. Okay. So we are in a good position now. Okay, so germination update. Like I said, we don't really have anything all that new. I guess the dragon fruit is still coming up. This guy is about 3/4 of an inch now. And the two first leaves are in a nice V as it keeps opening up. This guy is about to shed its seed shell. And this guy is about 1/4 of an inch and he's still got his seed shell. So it's kind of fun to see these dragon fruit growing from seed. other than that, I don't think we have anything really of note. We have the 2 habaneros that are coming. They're about, I don't know, 1.25 inches now. But we took a look at them yesterday and they're not much different. So I think we'll just kind of skip that. These are the different herbs that we're gonna do. So this is the thyme, and there's oregano that's kind of at a similar stage. It's a little bit smaller than these. These are starting to put out their first true leaves, which are very, very small. But as they continue to grow, that will be doing okay. We got some chives that are about 3 or 4 inches tall at their tallest. And I think I'm gonna water these so they're feeling a little light. The oregano as well. Okay, that little huckleberry is looking good. It's starting to open up leaves. I think it finally has rooted, so that's nice. I think that's it for germination. We might have another garlic or 2, but that's not all that noteworthy. Get this light repositioned again because I moved it. So you can see that these garlics have grown another inch. This one's grown 1 inch. These have all grown at least 1/2 inch just from yesterday, so that's pretty fun. So I don't think I've shown this one. This is sweet potato. It's just growing in some water here. I just soaked the potato until I got some roots. It did start to get a little bit soft, so that's why I took it out of the water. But once it had the roots going, it was totally fine. And actually, this is kind of crazy. These roots are sending things that are going straight up, and those I bet are going to become new sweet potato vines, and they're kind of crawling up the rim of this container. But I was thinking that these sweet potatoes will just go and grow. Eventually I might root it, but more than likely I'm just going to take off these slips. That's what they're called. Just break them off, plant those in water until they have roots, and then you can plant those in your garden. So the potato feels fairly nice and firm, so that's good. That means hopefully no rotting. Eventually it will start to rot out just because if you grow it solely in water, that's just what happens. But it's a nice specimen. It's really starting to leaf out. And I heard that you can actually eat these leaves, so that'll be interesting to try because I've never tried them before. So yeah, but I brought him out from under the table there. There is a light under that table, but he needs a little bit more light now. And it was, I guess, getting some light from the ambient light of the window, so that's a nice thing. Yeah, so Ziploc bags, this was kind of an experiment. Originally, there were some other like seed starts that were in here, but again, because it was kind of hidden back there behind the tomatoes, they didn't get as much water, so I have finally pulled them out. You can see, maybe I can show you, because you can't actually see. I can see good root development on these green onions, and they are perfectly happy. Okay, so this is a pepper top that I planted. I'm gonna probably take these. Okay, so this leaf naturally defoliated. That's good. That's okay. I do see a small green shoot right in there. I don't know the best position to hold that. Maybe right like that. But you might be able to see there's a green shoot starting there. And these two leaves are probably going to naturally defoliate as, yeah, see this one naturally defoliated too, because it was buried quite deep. This one looks like it's still attached. But yeah, I think this one is going to root. So I have successfully topped and rooted at least 3 pepper plants, so it is possible to do that, which is kind of cool. I'm going to put this in the propagation box now that we've extracted it from behind the tomatoes. There, it's got a little bit of light, but I'll probably have to give it a splash of water later. Oh, okay, germination report. Here are the 2 pumpkins. These pumpkin seeds actually came from grocery store bought pumpkins, and I believe that these were 2 years ago, so not last, well, I guess not 2 years ago, but not last Halloween, but the Halloween before that. We had saved the seeds and I just found them in the pantry. No special storage method. It was just in a bowl. I think it was a paper bowl. So I was like, maybe these will still be viable, and they were. And so what I did is I soaked the seeds overnight. That loosens up that hard outer shell, and that hard outer shell you can carefully peel off, and that'll reveal the cotyledons, which are these two first leaves, and a very, very, very small root nub. That's what I call it, I guess, the root nub. And that root nub, if you plant it vertically, this is how I planted it. I planted it vertically just because it actually gives the plant the easiest exit, because otherwise it has to, if it plants sideways, it has to send out that root sideways. That root goes down, and then it has to push that whole thing up through the soil, and then, okay, maybe I was too high in there. Push the whole thing up, and then it has to come up and then open. But if you plant it vertically to begin with, then it can just go like this and open. So these only took a day from, well, maybe 2 days. 2 days from when I put it in to being this tall. So that is a good way to start pumpkins, although pumpkins are vines, so probably you don't have to do it like that anyway. So yeah, nice little new pumpkin plants. Hopefully this year we'll get some pumpkins to carve, because I always plant the pumpkins late, but this year I'm going to be nailing it. I'm going to get them in the ground, and we're going to just sit until Halloween. Okay, so on to cuttings. We have some more grapevine cuttings, just because I was supposed to prune back the grapevines in the winter while they were dormant, but I didn't, so I did it just now. These grapevines actually look like they're about to burst. This was all one cane, and then I cut it up, so let's see if we can gonna remove this. Yeah, but look at this guy. He's taken off. Those stalks are over 2 feet. This one is probably 2.5 feet if it were completely, standing up straight. So you can definitely grow green onions and never ever have to buy green onions again. Just get a bunch of green onions, cut off the bottoms, plant those, eat the rest because that you cut off those bottoms. But any portion of that bottom part that has the roots still attached will grow. So you do not have, you can pretty much cut it to the nub and it will still grow. Okay, so these I don't know if I'm going to be able to reconstruct this necessarily, but we will try. Okay. Yeah, I'm not going to be able to reconstruct this, but it was just a very long cane, and then there was a branch here and a branch here. So I decided to cut it up into 5 cuttings. And the cuttings that came off of branches, so this is a branch, and this was a branch, kind of like that. And then this was a branch also. Everywhere that there was a branch, I kept the main stalk, and I'm going to plant that main stalk and then have this be the growing stalk. So the other grapevines I kind of beat up a little bit. I'm just going to do these ones as they are. And I will probably let's see here. So I don't have that much potting soil left. I think I will probably just do them in Ziploc bags and then reroot them later. Okay, I'll do maybe the smaller cuttings in one bag and then the bigger cuttings in their own bags. So maybe I just need 2. So I'm just going to take a skewer and give it some drainage holes. Quite a few. At least near the bottom so that it can drain and it won't sit in its own pool of water. Get pretty close to that seam, but you don't have to hopefully don't rip through it because that will severely degrade the structural integrity of the bag. I'm just going to do them at the bottom this time. I don't know if necessarily needs it more, but I don't want to spend the time doing it, and so we'll just do that. Oh, actually, I think I'll make it into one of the freestanding bags. Oh, but I don't have any more tape, so I'll have to use duct tape. I like that blue tape better, especially for this application. trying to get as good of an alignment as possible so that it stands up well. Okay, so come on. I've done this 100 times and I can't get it. Okay. So that's the one side. Okay, so that was not the best one that I've done, but it'll work. And because I don't have all that much soil, just gonna put this down here, more out of the way, so now you can see this a little bit better. So again, I know I'm being redundant if you've watched any of the others, but if you tape it like this, tape the bottom, you fold the corners in to make it flat on itself, then it'll stand up by itself. I only filled it up halfway, and I'm gonna fold this rim down. Okay. And I just work it down, work it down. Okay, so now you have a nice little round planter. So let's see, this I'm going to cut down just a tad to make it fit better, and to just have her sit right in there like that. Okay, again, these are the red table grapes. They were just these are not planted from seeds because they're a seedless variety, and so these are just cuttings. I believe these came from Home Depot, so. Work that in there so that we have a couple of nodes buried. Okay. That looks pretty good. We'll put that girl right there. And we'll water her in. Okay, so we'll go ahead and do another one, and maybe I will actually do this one by itself, and then I'll do the two that I'm going to plant standing up. I'll do that in its own bag, so you just have to kind of do things by ear when you're gardening. Fly by the seat of your pants, I guess is the saying. Okay, so again, I'm just going to poke some holes here at the bottom for drainage, and I'm just making 2 rows. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I happen to have 14 holes in the first row, but it doesn't really matter. Maybe anywhere from 10 to 14 in each row. And we will open the bag. Fold in our corner. Tape. Fold and stick. Fold and stick. And the reason why I'm using Ziploc bags, A, I don't have any more planter pots. B, the planter pots are actually kind of expensive. They're 5 times more expensive, if not more, 5 to 10 times more expensive. They aren't as utilitarian. Like, I mean, I could just go like that, right? Now I have, like, if you just put a little bit of soil, now I have an actual greenhouse. Or you want a little airflow. You can do something like that. If you want a small amount of airflow, or you could do like that. If you wanted bigger airflow, just put in a couple of straws, and now in your greenhouse you have ventilation. You can cut that. Or you could just, kind of leave that corner open. Not a big deal. I think it just helps give a little bit of shape to do that. Anyway, we'll continue with our project here. Fold this over as well, because I don't think these grapevines are going to like hardcore root. I mean, they're not like tomatoes, but I could be wrong. I'm not, like I always say, I'm not an expert. I'm just an enthusiast. So, but yeah. So I guess if you wanted to do more rows, you could do more rows, or actually you could probably tape it and then do the holes, just so, just to make it easier. But I don't think you need that many holes at the bottom, because we're not actually going to water these that much, just because they're going to be in the propagation box, and if they're in the propagation box, it holds in the humidity, which means that the soil is not going to get too dry anyway. I think sometimes doing it this method, you end up using your soil a little bit more judiciously. They're a lot easier to transplant because you just literally just peel it down. The soil never sticks to the bags. The bags are obviously food safe because they're designed and used for food. Yeah, so that's why I do it like that. So maybe you could try it out and see if it works as well for you as it does for me. And because I would be interested, maybe I'm totally wrong in my hypotheses. But I feel like everyone has access to Ziplocs, even if you live in podunk nowhere. You gotta have a little market or something that has Ziplocs. They're so ubiquitous. And I am going to put just a little bit more soil just to hold it up because this guy is a little bit tall. And actually I might kind of lean her over just a wee bit, not too much. Maybe I'll get this rock and put that there so to hold her up. Okay, so there's number 2. Okay. Forget to label, so I will do that now that I've remembered. So these are red grapes, cuttings. I think they were cut 214, 22. Actually, I need 3 labels. Cuttings 214, 20 planted. 215, 20. Wherever it sticks. If you're more prepared and you label the bag first while it's laying down, then maybe that would be a better way, but I always forget to label anyway, so that's just what I do. Okay, so this guy goes like this, We'll see if we can't get those guys to root. Oh, so this, the node is way up here, so I'm going to cut that back a little bit. That way we can get that hopefully planted a little bit deeper. This one has a node, so this one I might actually plant horizontally, and we'll see, and then this one I'll plant like this. So maybe this one I will put the label on first, like I was talking about. I'm going to put that label right there. I'm going to be folding down the rim of the bag. And then I will make the fold. Sorry, I kind of just flipped you off there. But I wanted to use that finger. So do that. Okay. Okay. So there is number 3. Put down the ring. Okay. There, perfect. This little ivy leaf out. Okay. Yeah, so I think I don't know if I mentioned this, but the problem with those planter pots, it's not really a problem, but you feel like you have to fill it all the way up. So, which is what I do. So I think we can actually conserve a little bit of soil by doing it this way. I'm going to cut off this part. That was just a little tendril that comes out to secure the plant. Because these are a little bit malleable, we can kind of make it into a better shape. So that guy is in. And this guy we were going to do vertically. Maybe I will kind of do it like that. Get some soil with our hand because it's easier to control. Another rock. Smash it in right there just to hold it. Get some more potting soil to backfill. Okay. That looks pretty darn good. Okay, so we have more red table grape cuttings. And those are just headed for the propagation box. Stick a little bit more water. And we will use that tray. perfect. Perfect. Actually, get this pepper back in there. Very nice. Okay. It's got a nice smell in there. So that's good. Actually, how is this? If you went for water. Feels pretty heavy, so yeah, looks like there's some water in the reservoir, so I might see how much. Oh, not much at all. Okay, so that's good. That means we got pretty much a good saturation here. Still don't see any of the pineapple seeds sprouting yet. I think I do see a seed though, right there. So, and then deeper in here is our first mango. There you are. And it is definitely rooted. Well, it's coming along, so that's nice. Hopefully that will shoot up the center, even though I think I placed it the wrong direction, so hopefully it won't do too bad. Okay, so what was next on the list, if I can find my list? Okay, so okay, so yeah, that's still going. So new cuttings, red table grapes. I think everything else is kind of good. Talked about the green onion. I might try to tie up these tomatoes now. And then that's kind of like all that I had planned for today. Usually I'm broadcasting at 10 a.m. on weekdays. I started on the 5th, so this is only the 8th episode. But I missed last Friday, not yesterday, but a week ago Friday, because my son was sick, so I thought that maybe I would just do an extra smaller broadcast today. So I think I'm going to try to move these tomatoes away from that window just so they don't get burned and they have a little bit more room to grow. That also means that I'll have a little bit more space down there for some plants that will thrive in just kind of more ambient light, so maybe like some lettuces or something, because they'll be below the window. And yeah, these things are just going. Looks like there's a new flower up there that just opened, a new flower there, so we're going good on those. It's probably time to water them today. And let's see, what's this? Where's this guy coming from? Okay, that's just a leaf branch, so I'm not too worried about that. Yeah, so there are different kinds of branchings on a tomato plant. There are suckers, which are basically just new plants, and you can literally break those off and plant them. And there are leaf branches. This is a leaf branch. If you broke this off and planted it, it will also root, but it will never, ever grow any fruit or flowers or new shoots or anything. It's just a dead end leaf branch. So I actually planted one of those in this hydroponic bucket here. So I got different setups. I got a hydro bucket there, a hydro bucket here, and then 3 12 inchers. These are overplanted. So again, these plants that are indoors are not necessarily for food, although they are producing. This tomato here is almost ready to harvest, another couple of days. And then another one or two right behind it. These tomatoes are just to keep going and keep alive so that I'll have good stock to plant outside, and I'll be able to sell off some of these suckers hopefully to neighbors and friends, and or give them away. So tomato plants give a lot of good, beautiful green. I love the color of green that they are. They're when they're healthy, they're just this wonderful, vibrant, dark green. And the new leaves are this beautiful, lighter dark green. And the flowers have that kind of understated yellow, which is just a subtle, beautiful flower. And then I love the smell of tomatoes. So every time that you pet your tomato, it just sends out tomato smell. It's just awesome. And then tomatoes are fast growing and gregarious and produce awesome fruit and have just a wonderful ambiance to them, I think. And if you just let them go, it just creates all this foliage and color. And like I said, they go everywhere. So I could eventually top these off if they get too big for their pots, which they obviously are all already. But again, they're not for fruiting necessarily. So maybe I will go ahead and do that. I'm probably not going to talk while I do that necessarily. I need to figure out the best way of getting up there. But I didn't find the cotton string that I was looking for, but I did find this string. It's a 4-cord thread. So it's not the strongest, best stuff, but it'll do. So I need to find a stool or something to get up there. Okay. So found another bucket lid, which is good. Use that as our this stuff out. Unplugging the computer. Let's put some feet on that. Some of these furniture feet, because we are on hardwood. Spilling my coffee. Podcasting. Hangout. This is not for people who want fast information and clean editing and all that kind of stuff. I just don't have time or patience or energy to do that. Leave that up to people who do, because I do really appreciate those awesome YouTube videos. I mean, I know a lot of the channels that I like are more just kind of hangouts and conversations and things like that. Have a gardening conversation or something. Out of the way, and then you can watch me almost kill myself trying to those tomatoes. Be a lot nicer. Oh, darn it. Of course. A little bit that we're doing our original stuff, kind of. Okay, so it looks like we're back. Sorry about that. I think I know what the problem is and why the stream keeps cutting out. At least not if it's not a connection problem. What happens is that right now I have a 10-foot USB cable going from a charging port to one of those power packs. And once the phone battery gets fully charged, that power pack turns off, and then the phone just starts to slowly drain. So, but now that I know that, I can kind of mitigate that or get a iPhone charging cable that's long enough, or an extension cord or something. So hopefully that won't happen in the future, because I lost about an hour. The last that oh yeah, so sorry. Welcome back to GrowSeattle. This is the Grow Lab garden, and I call it the Grow Lab just because I like to do little plant experiments in here and just try to find the things that work best for me to get things growing indoors, and eventually we're going to do some stuff outdoors. I'm fairly new to gardening as a whole, and so I'm kind of learning along with you. So this might not be necessarily the channel for you if you are an avid gardener. I'm not going to be adding necessarily anything new. I'm just going to be doing fun stuff here in the garden, and I'm just going to encourage you to do the same. So again, where last we left off, we had these tomatoes here flopping over. So I moved those back from the window so that they weren't touching the window, and I tied them up to this curtain rod here. And eventually I'm just going to have it trail all the way around this room. And I was thinking I might, once we get past the curtain rod, I was thinking that either I would let them kind of drape down, or I would just get command hooks and put hooks around, or some other method of doing that. And then we went over a whole bunch of other stuff that I'm not sure what I missed, so I'm just going to skip that for today, and we'll maybe talk about those things tomorrow if I can figure out what it was that was not talked about. But these leaves are getting nice and big. This is an avocado that I planted just from an avocado from the store. I just put it about 2 inches deep outside, and it came up in the summer. The first year's growth, though, was this little guy. And I planted it really late in the season, so I didn't really have any expectations as usual. I don't have expectations on these kinds of projects. But he came up and put out probably 5 or 6 leaves about this size, maybe this size. That's about a 3-inch leaf and about 1.5 inches across. Put out 5 or 6 leaves about that size, and then eventually died off. And I thought that it was not going to come up the next year, but it eventually did. It sent up this stalk, and this stalk died off. It actually had a growing tip up here. That growing tip eventually died off because avocados are semi-tropical, I believe, and they're kind of a semi-arid plant, if I'm not mistaken. And what happens is that these avocados will send down a tap root way down. That's that initial root that comes down, and that's a seeker root, and that just goes and tries to find some water. So I wouldn't be surprised if that root, and actually maybe I'm going to check that real quick. I wouldn't be surprised if that root didn't make its way to one of the feet of this planter. It's hard to do with one hand. Come on, I just had this. Oh, there. Spray myself. Oh yeah, so there's a root coming out. So that was seeking that water. It was probably loving that little pool of water that I just took away from it. But I'm gonna, oh, darn it. Oh well, I'll deal with that later. But I'm gonna go ahead and give it another good water. I was checking that. Actually, maybe I'm not. I think it's okay. It's not showing any signs of stress. But I will water it right before I go on vacation. I'm gonna water everything fairly heavily, and then hopefully my wife can water once, and then everything will hopefully be able to sustain itself until then. Dirty water off of me. But yeah, so it has 1 branch, 2 branches. There's new growth coming out of this node and this node and this node. So we're going to have 3 more branches. There might be a branch starting here, but I'm not 100% sure. And this thing is totally infested with fungus gnats. So I'm going to have to do a treatment on it, although it is fairly well established and it's fairly far down, so the roots of this thing are not actually that well accessible, so hopefully, even though there are a lot of fungus gnats on it, hopefully it doesn't have enough for them to be feeding. So we'll go ahead and put this guy back, but I am going to have to wipe the bottom, and again I need to get something other than paper towels because I don't want to keep wasting paper towels. Okay, so just wipe that down, put that back into the light. That'll be alright. This asparagus is still kind of chilling. I don't know. I did put a little bit more soil on top, so it might take a while to shoot up past that. These, I believe, are kale. They're good. So first real leaf, started first. So those are taking off, except for this one. I don't know what that one is. That's probably a cucumber replant. But yeah, this tomato plant I think was getting kind of too close to this light. I might have to drop it down now. I might do that right now if I can figure out how I tie that. Okay, so there we go. I'll drop it down. And this we will too much noise. Okay, so now we will tie that off. Those tomatoes will be happier, they'll have more room. This can be used for these. I'm going to tie it very, very loose so that they kind of start to drape this way. I'm going to try to not disrupt those flowers. I will jostle them to get them pollinating a little better. And this is a leaf stem. I don't think that this is a sucker. I think this is a leaf stem. So, no, that is a sucker. So that's just the sucker that's kind of died. I'm going to pull it. And actually, it might come back, but I'm going to just cut it out. Hopefully that'll promote. This is a leaf stem that I think was too close to the light. This also is a leaf stem that was too close to the light. This one looks like a good candidate for just plucking. So to pluck it, just bend it down in on itself and then kind of pull down. You do have a risk of pulling some of the veins along with it, but if you get good at it, then you'll be able to tell. But I still make mistakes, and it's okay. The tomatoes are really good at healing themselves. This leaf, I'm just going to cut off the bad tip of that because the rest of those looked okay. I'm going to take this folder off. And let's see here. I think this one got too close to either the light or the window, because the window gets pretty cold at night. And it just saps the heat out of the leaves, and then you die when they're too cold, because again, these are subtropical plants. Okay, so this one also, I think, just too close to the window. That one also, but I think I'll just let that one be. This. Just let that tip off. This is going towards the window, so I need to pull that back somehow. Where did I put this string? So this is the sucker, that's the new plant, and unfortunately it's going to go right up through light, but I don't see any other choice for it. I'm just going to let it go. I think part of also, I don't think it's necessarily that the light is too hot or too bright or whatever. I think part of it is that fan dries out the leaves, because they do like some humidity. That's why they grow well in hot houses. Trying to figure out the best knot to use. I'm not very good at knots. My dad is really good at knots. Okay. Oh, that works well. Okay. And then yeah, that's undoable. Okay. That's probably the best way to do it. Just kind of like shoelace style. And because there's tension on it, it kind of stays. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with that. Maybe we can get this leader to come that way. Seek up those. Get this leader on this side of the string, along with that leaf branch. There. Now everything is kind of going that way. We have a better thing like that. And I need to figure out a way to get this to be tilted, so maybe I can tie that a little differently, or actually if I tie that, oh, yeah, okay. If I put a little duct tape maybe? First, I'm going to just make a little pad. Too much. Okay, that just gives it a little bit of an angle, and actually if I put something had it over there, that would help. There. Okay, so this will be a lot better now because none of the light is going to be shining outside. It's all going to come inside. At least that is the theory. And that towel might actually help dampen the fan noise. Okay, that looks good. That looks good. And hopefully now that it's away from the window a little bit more, this will fare slightly better. Okay, but I will turn that off because that is kind of annoying. But actually, how much is going outside? Yeah, not too much. Good. So, at least things won't be kind of all wonky while I'm on vacation, so that'll be nice. Okay, so because the live stream cut out and an hour was lost, well, you missed a whole bunch of stuff that I did. I'm pretty sure I went over this sweet potato, which is still blowing my mind. Yeah, maybe I can bring it closer. This is still just blowing my mind. Look at that root growth. And look at those roots that are coming up on the rim. I think those are gonna all turn into new shoots, if I'm not mistaken. But anyway, we will be breaking off some of these slips and planting those. I'm gonna try to do maybe a 5-gallon bucket of sweet potatoes also. Let's see, what are these? Bush bean. Okay, that was the bush bean transplant and the baby white potato, which actually I need to move the labels. And actually, I should probably also update the labels. So baby white potato, I think that was 2.5. I'm not sure. It's close enough. TP for transplanted 215. And we'll put it on the side of the baby potato. Here's bush bean. I don't know when the bush beans were planted either. I think those were also on the 5th. 2.5, 20, TP, 2.15, 20. But yeah, that looks like about 2 weeks worth of growth and development. So we'll go ahead and do that. And I don't know if you saw the dragon fruit. pod is about to come off, but don't want to hurt the little dragon fruit. There we go. Coaxed it off. Now we'll be able to open and photosynthesize. And actually, I should probably be putting the dragon fruit in full light, because they are a kind of tropical plant, I think. The only thing is that I don't really have all that much available real estate over here. And things are, you just have to keep moving back and forth, back and forth. Kind of clean this up. I'm going to keep this string over there because I want to keep that for the tomatoes. Make sure those cups are nice and empty. I guess I could plant out that rice. So I have some soil there. Yeah, I could do that. Why don't I do that? Okay, so we'll fill up this cup from the soil that was from the bucket that we planted the potato in. We had to excavate some of that. Oh, that's probably what cut off is the potato and bush bean. 1 cup. And 2 cups. And these ones are draining, so that's good. I might just put this guy here. This guy here. Okay. And here is the rice and brown rice that has started to get its roots going. Just slightly, but that's all you need for it to be activated. So I'm going to go ahead and plant like just a whole bunch. Without some of this water. I'm just going to plant a whole bunch in each cup and see how many come. And rice is, I think, fairly easily transplanted, because if you see movies or videos of rice farmers doing their thing, they're not necessarily gentle with the rice grains. So I'm not 100% sure. I've never seen it or done it in real life. This is the first time planting rice. This is just rice out of a bag of rice from the grocery store, or actually from a Korean market. But it's just normal rice. This was a mix though of poke brown rice, which just means rice that is hasn't been polished and the germ is still attached. I want to do about equal, although I didn't count and I'm not going to. Just kind of about an equal distribution in both cups. sure how rice farmers plant their rice, but I am no rice farmer, so I'm just gonna do as I see fit. But I think that's pretty cool that you can just sprout the rice and get it going. Okay, just take a little bit of soil and lightly sprinkle, which is what I did with the other stuff. Actually, the other stuff I started in cocoa coir after I soaked it. So this is a different planting method than last time, so we'll have to remember that and keep tabs on that to see if this really well draining nice mushroom mycelium inoculated potting soil, I know that's a mouthful, if that makes a big difference. Okay, I'm going to do one where I buried it a little bit, just barely under a little bit of soil. And just for fun, I'm going to do one where I don't bury it very much. If anything, I'm just pressing it into the soil, and I'm just going to let it do its thing, because in nature, the rice grains just fall onto the ground. And then maybe some of the rice husk, when it dries out and falls to the ground, maybe that covers it over winter or whatever the growing period is, or the off season or dry season or whatever the season is for rice. Again, this is just an experiment. I've never grown rice before. And just as a reminder, all of this stuff is just mostly from the grocery store or seed packets. So definitely try to grow as many things as you can, because I think it's a fun experiment and you really learn about different plants and how plants have decided to develop. And I think that's really cool. So I'm just trying to saturate this cup so that it drains out the bottom, because the first watering is always the best. Okay, so with this particular sprayer, if it's at a moderate flow, moderate pressure level, then it's about a quarter cup for every 10 seconds. But this is a little bit less than a moderate flow, so, you know, a leisurely 10 count will do. And I might go ahead and water this cactus because the soil is starting to blister. But not too much. For the amount of the size of the container. The roots don't go very deep on those. Okay, what are these little carrots especially? We don't need to go overboard because this whole bucket was pretty well watered when it was planted, and it was only planted a couple of days ago. This was left over from the plum, so we can save that for coverings. This can go there. Tomato cuttings can go in the compost bowl. Planter bag over there. These are the show notes. Okay, so actually let's see what we might have missed. Tying up the tomatoes. Okay. I think everything that was on the list to talk about today was talked about, so I'm not too concerned. And, you know, I'm just hanging out in the garden, so I thought that you might want to join me. Some of you, maybe some of you, this isn't your cup of tea, but I kind of like the YouTube channels that, you know, people are just kind of hanging out. And I'm thinking further down the line, I might invite some people to hang out in the garden and kind of talk about plants, maybe get an expert or two in here, and I think, I think that would be kind of a cool thing to do. Maybe cross-pollinate with some other channels on YouTube, or, you know, see how it goes. But I think that might be it today. These paperweights are at the end of their life. I just wanted to stand up though, because why not? A little bit more green in the room never hurt. I need to get these asparagus planted pretty soon, because I don't think they're going to last too much longer. And I'm wondering if that's why this asparagus didn't work out. And I'm surprised that this ginger hasn't gone yet, although the pieces of ginger were only about that big, so I don't know if I got anything that will root, but I think ginger is pretty prolific, so I'm hoping that will root. Oh, was I talking about the hydrangeas and blueberry when it cut out? Probably. These are fresh or new growth blueberry cuttings that seem to be rooting. The traditional method is taking dormant canes and cutting those, and cutting off all the branches and overwintering them in cool, moist soil. But I think these are gonna take. I think the hydrangeas are definitely gonna take. Definitely the climbing hydrangeas, because they have those air roots coming out all over the place. And I'll show you the difference actually between a climbing and a non-climbing hydrangea. So this is the traditional hydrangea. This has a nice growing head, and also nice buds coming out the side. Although, are those roots? Those might actually be air roots. So even the non-climbing hydrangea looks like possibly, if a branch gets broken off and it lays down, that it could possibly take root. So that might be another experiment to do, is to see if you can just put it flat on the soil, or maybe flat on the soil and bury it, or flat on the soil and put a leaf on top or something. But you can see here that the climbing hydrangeas have all of these air roots, and those are seekers to try to grab onto something. So if it caught onto this, it would hold on to this hydrangea. But you can tell that they're both hydrangeas. They looked exactly the same except for the amount of air roots, and I do notice that there are some air roots here, so I was wrong. It's apparently able to send out air roots. But then again, it makes sense that hydrangeas are easily propagatable, because they're such a common plant in the garden, especially in the Northwest. I wanted to check this pea, because I thought I had a pea pod starting to form on one of these. If I can find it. Oh, yep, right there. Very, very tiny. Maybe I can come and show. I don't know if you're going to be able to see that, But right there next to that stick on the pea vine next to the stick, there is a very, very small sweet pea starting to grow. And I have one over there that's planted in the tomato planter along with a whole slew of tomatoes. I mean, each of those 12-inch planters have 4 tomato vines planted in them. And I've just been watering them and then letting them get fairly dry, and then watering them, letting them get dry. And you can tell the tomatoes will be a little bit wilty, but then they just jump right back once you water them. Probably I need to water soon, although I wanted to check the drip trays, and now I have access to them, which is nice. I need to pull this out a little bit. Oh, that's good enough for now. Oh, that tomato is looking beautiful. Don't know if you can see that. Maybe if I get stuff out of the way. Okay. So right in here, there's a small person's fist sized tomato. It has a sister there, and a dried up little sister there, and 1, 2 more green, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You know, I had a whole bunch of them. I'm not going to go recount, but I had a whole bunch, and I've seen new flowers starting to come, so I'm just busy as a bee coming here and trying to pollinate them. Pollinate. Oh yeah, more flowers coming. Looks like that is a flower. Flowers. Okay, and then this is just how you pollinate. Oh yeah, huge group of flowers there. This vine is really taking off. I think this is one of the hydro vines, but let me trace it down. Okay, yeah, that's this bucket here. The stem down here is actually really, really nice and woody, but very, very thin compared to the thick branch right here. This is probably a third bigger, a third thicker. So that's quite interesting, but it is taking off, and I probably need to check the amount of water it has eventually. Okay, yeah, it is good. It's got a good amount of air. So these 2 buckets are both 2-gallon buckets. One has the lid with a 6-inch net pot drilled, and that the net pot is filled with the hydro pebbles, and then I planted a sucker off of one of these in that. This one are tomatoes that I saved from outside. They were looking really scraggly right before winter, and I was growing those in this hydro bucket. This hydro bucket is completely filled with hydro pebbles, which are floating on the solution, and there's enough weight that there's enough water coming up. So they're doing okay. This method, and maybe because the plants were so scraggly at the beginning, they're not as robust as any of the other plants, but it's doing okay. And I've been feeding them, so hopefully they will come around. This was just a random experiment that I think is going to end up failing. These were what are they called? Nutmeg nuts, or whatever, nutmeg seeds. That was just an experiment, because some herbs and spices actually do germinate well out of the spice cupboard. So coriander, I believe, is one. White pepper kernels, not the black ones. The black ones are not yet developed, but the white ones, I believe, are. So I think as the peppercorn develops, it goes from kind of like a green to a red to a black to a white. But I could be totally messing that up. So again, I'm not an expert. I'm just an enthusiast. I just like growing plants. But like I said, I wanted to do maybe, actually I don't know if I said this because I might have gotten cut off too, but eventually I want to turn this into a whiteboard, get rid of that painting, and maybe film some more educational segments, maybe not live, maybe more produced. And because otherwise otherwise everything here is just mainly hanging out and having fun, which is kind of like what I like to do. So eventually I will find somewhere to plant this rice. Ooh, I could plant it with those apples. That would be kind of interesting. And actually, I think I was going to talk about these apples right before I noticed that the stream cut out, so maybe I will do that. I feel like I need a beverage, so maybe I will do that. So I'll be right back, and you just take a look at these apples, I guess. Okay, you think you can see them? Yep. Okay, so these are either Cosmic Crisp or Fuji apple seeds from the grocery store. It doesn't really matter because apples do not breed true, and oftentimes they will regress back to a non-eating apple, because a lot of the apples that we eat these days are super hybridized, and things are just propagated via cuttings, which makes a perfect copy of the mother donor plant. But these guys are looking good. This is just another container that is filled with those clay hydro pebbles at the bottom. There is some sort of pine that came off of a tree branch that I found on a walk, so it is starting to defoliate, which is okay. It's just the plant's natural protection against losing too much water, and it's also noticing that it has no roots because it's just a little tree branch, and the soil is feeling a little bit dryish on top, although it still has some moisture in it, so I'm not too worried, but I just want to get some of these needles off so I can keep track of how many. Okay, so maybe I should just leave this sucker alone. Otherwise, I might just knock off all the leaves, which might not be bad, but I think I'll just leave it. Give it a good spray. give the mounds that the apple trees are planted on a good spray, but nothing else until we plant that rice. So this soil I think is a little bit wetter mix, which is good for apples, and I think it's going to be good for this rice. So it's going to be an interesting experiment. And I have no expectations for this little pine cutting because I pulled it off on a walk, and so it didn't get transplanted for a good half an hour to an hour. So yeah, it's not a big deal. But basically for the apples, these were started in cups, and then I just took them out and then laid the whole thing on top and kind of just mounded dirt around so that it had more travel, because if I dug it down then it wouldn't have had enough space to root, and these apple roots are going to mostly just go straight down, so I'm not too worried. Those apples could probably be transplanted out fairly soon, which I will probably end up doing. I'm going to kind of break this up a little bit because I want the soil to be fairly fine when we plant the apples. Oh yeah, see, there's a big clump. Yeah, this might be mostly peat, sphagnum peat. Which the apples seem to like really well, so I guess the apples work well in a higher acidity. I think that's what it ends up being, as a higher acidity. Okay, I'm not going to disturb that pine all too much. Okay, so I think that's a good start. So we'll take these. And I guess these I'll try to do more in a pattern than the other. To be necessarily this careful about it, I don't think, but I'm just trying different planting methods, different techniques to see what works and what doesn't work, because again, that's why I call it the GrowSeattle Grow Lab. So the GrowSeattle Grow Lab garden. Sure that I choose seeds that I know are going to have a chance to germinate. So this seed, the germ or the embryo part of the grain was all broken off, so I know that that had no chance to root. And you can kind of see that some of these are pretty well on their way to being rice plants. I don't know if you can see that, but some of those have some roots going. And again, this is just rice out of a bag of rice from the grocery store, as long as it's brown rice, because white rice is brown rice. And then they polish it, and that knocks off the germ, which is the embryo, which is what develops into the root and the shoot. But that is totally plantable. And I'm pretty sure that rice breeds true, so you're gonna, I mean, it may or may not, but I think it does. Okay, so that's the first row. And then just kind of continue on with moderate spacing, because I think these are pretty easy to pull apart. Again, they're started in bunches usually. They're started in bunches in fairly dry soil, and then they're transplanted into those rice paddies. So we are going to try to mimic that, and probably we'll excavate these apple trees out eventually, although I think those apples would also be fine to do semi-hydroponically, because eventually these rice will benefit from being flooded. Now, flooding is what makes the rice grains really, really plump up and allows them to be good food and to be able to be saved for the next planting season with the most amount of energy. Okay, so that's row number 2. So let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. And I'm just trying to pick the grains that I know have something started. So I'm not being so super picky. Like, I could have dumped it out and just gone for the ones that all have the biggest root. But I don't think that's necessarily going to be all that important in the long run. So that would just be more work for me. And I'm not about to do that. Okay, so that's 19. 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 6, 7, 8, 9. Actually, I don't want to get too close to this time, so I will cordon off an area. I'll use these little pebbles, just make it look pretty. I don't know, I'm just being a dork. Just a little for fun. Fun little rock garden. Maybe one of the cooler of the clay pebbles to give it a little character. Okay, so, oh, actually, I might use a clay pebble to help me prop this guy up, because I want him to grow more upright. Okay, so kind of split the difference there. So just use the tools that you have available. And we'll get back to planting rice. This is, I guess, an homage to my ancestors from Korea. But you can really feel that these rice grains have kind of plumped up. Oh, this one has a nice root going. But these have really plumped up in the water, not as much as if you would have cooked it. But still, I don't know, this is kind of fun. So, A, it's fun because it's an experiment, and B, it's fun because it's kind of an homage to my heritage. Kind of inadvertently, I just went on a binge of trying to find things that I could try to plant from the pantry slash refrigerator slash garage slash whatnot. So every year we grow some potatoes, and so so I have some seed potato from stock that I actually grew, so that's kind of a new thing for me. And that's what I love about gardening, is that there's always something new, right? New plant, new technique. I think I might put one or two over here. That will be good. And then we'll go ahead and count again. The number that we actually planted, just so we can see what the actual successful germination rate is going to be. Although, because we're starting all with rice grains that have been soaked and that have a root starting to grow, I am going to guess that it's going to be a near 100% germination rate, unless I accidentally crushed one of the roots, which I don't think I have. So maybe, oh, there's one more there. I was thinking maybe I could squeeze another one right there, but I think, no, I think I won't. I think that's pretty good, so let's count it out. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38. Actually, let's do 40. Why not? 40. Okay, so one there, and I will do one over here after all. And then that will be 40. Not that it makes any difference, the number that you start out with, but you know, I want to grow my own bowl of rice, one for each of the 3 members of my family, because I think that would be quite a fun accomplishment, because not many people do that who are suburban dwelling. Okay. And I'm going to water these in. So this soil is actually fairly dry for what it is, because I think it's a fairly mossy mix. And I don't know if rice is going to do well in this more acidic soil, so we will see. Again, we have different grow conditions. We have some over there. Oh, yeah. FYI, I don't know if this was if this got cut off or not. FYI, here's some rice that I planted in just the really well draining potting soil. And this was some that I just sprinkled on top. And so those are the two grow conditions. There's the semi-buried, and I guess I could bury the couple that I see so that it's a fair assessment. Of planted versus unplanted, buried versus unburied rice. And so that's the really well draining soil. This is the acidic soil, the peat moss. I keep saying peat moss, but there are different types of peat, right? So there's the sphagnum peat, which I think is renewable. And then there's the peat bog peat moss, which is not renewable. That's at least what I remember. I might just be making that up, but I don't think so. I mean, the older that you get, the more you cannot rely on your memory, and even when you're young, you can't rely on your memory because memory is just so flawed. Okay, so I do see an apple root here and here, which is okay. I think I might actually go ahead and bury that again. I'll probably just take a pinch of this and bury that again, because although it would be kind of cool to develop that as a air root, or as like at least as a visible root, it wouldn't necessarily be an air root per se. As fun as that would be, I think I'm going to bury it just to give it the best chance that it can have. Let's feel this. Okay, that is feeling a little bit heavier. I'm going to spray it just a little bit more though. Because I want it to be in a fairly good position. Okay, and rice obviously is fairly flood tolerant because it is flooded. Although they do plant it dry, I believe. So I think what I'm going to do is grab some of this excess soil out of this plum. I'm just going to cover those with a pinch each. And that way I'll know kind of where the boundary of the rice is versus the not planted part. Although probably could remember the general arrangement. You know, and I guess I should maybe kind of do this like more like a radio show where I interrupt and say, "Welcome to the live stream" or something. You know, it's like just be a little bit more friendly. But I know I kind of mumble and trail on and that kind of thing. But I'm working on it as I get more and more experience under my belt. Hopefully, I'll be able to build this channel out a little bit more and encourage people to grow along with me the different plants. We'll hopefully get into more do a series of educational videos like plant anatomy, plant propagation, seed storage, maybe even into breeding. That might be fun because I have never done that before. And again, this is just a hangout where I'm just in the garden, in the GrowSeattle garden, GrowSeattle Grow Lab garden, I'm trying to get that phrase down as kind of the title of this area. Trying to get that down and just have fun and hang out with, and hopefully as this channel grows, hopefully we'll actually get some participation because I think the only people who are watching right now are me and me. One is the studio and one is the feed, just to make sure that the broadcast is going through live on YouTube. But anyway, we have planted out our rice and covered it with some of the very nice, well-draining potting soil. Covered up this apple root. We watered the rice in, and we will do it one more time since we put a little bit more soil on top. Making sure to get good coverage. And we're not going to water too much because, actually I guess we could, because there are clay pebbles on the bottom of this, and so any water is going to eventually just collect there. And actually I should probably make a little well somewhere. Maybe I could do that right here, or right here on the back side. But maybe I'll do that later. It sounds like family is home, so I think I'll cut the live stream off there. Okay, see you next time.